September 1st marks the end of 40 years of kids television history in the UK, as the CITV channel says, see you later. But this big yellow C isn't just another channel succumbing to streaming hype. It's a canary in the coal mine that warns of a bleak future for the genre in Britain. I'm Benzie Johnson Jr., I'm enthusiastic about television. Let's break down how we got here, and how this channel closing threatens the future of British kids fare. Kids TV has had a turbulent ride lately. As the variety of content options expands, it's been hard to corral viewers over for the latest creations. And as bad as the declines have been in US output, internationally the landscape has proven even more challenging. But there was once a time when everyone wanted in. Unlike its end, the beginnings of the CITV channel had a complex history, but one that was important to the British TV landscape and influenced the channel we're about to watch close. This is a bit of a long one, but it all connects, so stick with me. Like in most places, children's television in the UK, as a concept, is about as old as television itself. But CITV's lineage technically dates back to when ITV, the network of regional stations, launched Watch It at the end of 1980, looking to bring consistency to their kids' TV efforts through a nationally networked programming block. In January 1983, this gave way to Childrens ITV, introducing hosted segments wrapped around the programs, continuity, or links, and with it, the classical style of UK kids TV. 2 channels over, this spurred the BBC to launch the similar Children's BBC block in 1985, soon to become their longtime rival, but we'll get back to them a little later. The 80s also saw the launch of morning shows in the UK, or breakfast television as they dub it. ITV's first effort was TVAM, set up in 1983 as a new region defined by its airtime rather than its location. Kids TV would prove an important part of the new broadcaster, especially on weekends, in spite of the constant turmoil that defined its decade on air. Its successor GMTV would carry the same torch when it became the breakfast broadcaster in 1993. Back later in the day, the name of the original block was officially shortened to CITV in 1998, though it had been informally truncated since 1993. There were a lot of other changes in shows that happened over this time, but those will be fawned over in all the nostalgia-waxing newspaper articles about the closure. Instead, let's fast forward into the new millennium. ITV was slowly consolidating into a national network, or at least one network in the UK nations of England and Wales, as Scotland and Northern Ireland still had separate franchisees, and broadcasters were investing into the nascent world of digital television. The 2 dominant franchise holders at the time, Granada and Carlton, helped launch ITV2 in 1998 as quite literally a second ITV, technical regional divisions and all. This included the franchisees in Scotland and Northern Ireland briefly running their own second channels before ultimately subsuming into ITV2, and the launch of a second breakfast license, GMTV2, which would heavily feature kids programming. We'll get back to the GMTV2 license later. There were a few false starts for a standalone CITV channel. Plans in 2001 were dashed by budget cuts that put the viability of ITV's kids' efforts into question. And those would only get worse. Meanwhile, their rivals on the other side at the BBC would launch a CBBC channel in 2002. In 2004, Granada and Carlton officially merged into ITV plc, and the new company looked into creating a kids' TV channel as a joint venture with Nick or Disney. Plans to team up with Nick were announced, then quickly fell apart over the spring and summer of 2005, and ITV affirmed they'd go it alone instead, despite calling that an overpopulated market the year prior. The CITV channel officially launched on March 11, 2006, airing every day from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Initially timeshare with men's channel ITV4 launched the previous November until that went full-time in early 2008. The GMTV2 service, previously on ITV2, also moved over to the new channel, integrating as CITV's morning schedule. The Weekend Kids lineup of GMTV would also be simulcast on CITV until that space became a straight simulcast of CITV itself when GMTV was replaced by a new breakfast license, fully owned by ITV, in fall of 2010. While CITV generally serves the mainstream kids demographic, it also ran preschool programming from 2009 until 2014. It was labeled as Mini CITV until ITV's 2013 rebrand. ITV would separately return to preschool fare through the 2018 launch of the Lilby block on their reality TV channel ITVB. The launch of CITV as a full-time, separate channel coincided with, and perhaps occurred in spite of, worrisome changes for ITV's kids output as a whole. After already seeing a 25% reduction in its then £40 million budget in 2001, another round of cuts struck in 2005, in the face of a pending ban on junk food ads during UK Kids TV, increasing competition for new imports, and the perceived rising costs of original production. Even the BBC's Kids TV head asked ITV to reconsider, calling it damaging for choice and competition. But it seemed the writing would ultimately be on the wall. In the summer of 2006, just months after CITV launched, ITV closed down its internal Kids TV unit, spelling the end of £28 million a year in commissioning investment. Sources suggested to media at the time that ITV wanted to leave the genre altogether, and regulators allowing ITV to cut back to just 8 hours of kids programming a week on its main channel, then only 5 hours a week in 2007, seemed to signal the start of it. While ITV initially denied they were ditching kids shows from its main channel schedule, they'd do it anyway by ending the original CITV programming block on November 13, 2006. GMTV's kids output, still legally separate, would be the only kids TV presence on ITV1, with in a sense CITV being the group's main outpost for kids fare. Given these shifts, CITV never really felt on the same footing as its blocky green rival CBBC, at least in my experience with them. The channel's made plenty of shows over the years, like Fleabag Monkey Face, Horrid Henry, Matt Harra Chronicles with Canada and Ireland, 4 more seasons of Fort Boyard Ultimate Challenge after Disney XD pulled out, Bear Grylls Survival School, Thunderbirds Are Go, a reboot of a UK classic, the action-packed epic Robozuna, totally a thing you should watch, and a variety of adventure games like Spy School, Project Z, and Don't Unleash the Beast, all pretty good in my opinion. But in my mind, it also has a reputation for not giving enough attention to many of these creations, content with seemingly airing nothing but Scooby-Doo and Almost Naked Animals at times, alongside the ever-present homegrown Mr. Bean and Horrid Henry. CITV's schedule has regularly been awash in imports, including from all 3 US kids networks at differing times, Canada, and sometimes Europe, the latter particularly recently. Their commitment to making their own content has been welcome, but inconsistent. They never seemed that into co-productions, if costs really have been such a prevalent issue, unlike CBBC, who seem to regularly hop onto them. Recent co-pros include Boy Girl Dog Cat Mouse Cheese and the Total Drama reboot, on top of their domestic prowess. CITV's most recent push into original content is mainly the result of their access to the British Film Institute's Young Audiences Content Fund starting in 2019. Once that money dried up at the end of 2021, so did the channel's interest. With the end of the classic-style programming block scrambled during the weekend simulcast space in 2021, a switch to generic promos not long after, and executive oversight for CITV moving from a dedicated department to the existing teams for other content, any marginal efforts to keep the channel going seemed to be slipping away. And in March 2023, ITV started to gather the nails for the channel's coffin, announcing that the CITV channel and brand would close, to be replaced by a new on-demand offering on the broadcaster streaming service ITVX. An ITVX Kids streaming channel launched in July, and in mid-August, we finally got the full gruesome details about CITV's demise. Head back to school safe with NordVPN and get up to 68% off and up to 3 months extra for free at the link in the video description. The channel would close as of 9 p.m. on September 1st, 2023, and with it would also go the weekend kids programming simulcast on ITV1. Replacing that would be reruns of the bland, interchangeable, fluffy chat shows which began creeping into the airtime during Scrambled's off-seasons, though more prominently since 2018. The advent of those shows seemed to signal ITV's final intentions to just go through the motions on kids fare, checking off the license requirement for ITV1 to have 5 hours a week of kids content just by making sure the CITV simulcast ran weekend mornings between 6 and 8:30. Aside from Lil B on ITVB, which survives unharmed, the only linear presence for kids programming anywhere on ITV's channels will be a new programming block airing on ITV2 between 5 and 9 a.m., set to feature heavy promotion of ITVX Kids. I suspect this new block may be the vestiges of the GMTV2 license in a perverse homecoming, the one obligation ITV hasn't been able to ditch yet, though I imagine they'll be plotting its demise soon enough. The lineup of the new ITV2 block's first week, depressingly, consists almost entirely of US imports. The only originals scheduled are airings of Dodo on weekends at 5 a.m. That sort of scheduling, and the programming decisions made within it, feels telling about the damage the death of CITV will do. As much as there are many more viewing options for young audiences nowadays, visibility of traditional kids TV, or most things really, on streaming services is sorely lacking, and there's no indication ITV will magically buck that trend. I understand that linear audiences are shifting, but as we've seen from US services in recent years, streaming isn't the magic savior of media it's been hyped up to be. The likes of Netflix and Max here in the US have shown active contempt to kids' TV, seeing it as just another of the less lucrative niche audiences worth ignoring that streaming proponents once promised would be super served. Their lacking commitment to present and future investment into the genre also suggests they may not really care about any of that. When the closure of CITV was originally announced, ITV attempted to spin the news by promoting new series coming to the streaming venture. However, some of these shows had already been running on the erstwhile CITV channel as early as last fall, making describing them as new disingenuous. There has been nothing said, to my knowledge, of any new projects specifically for ITVX Kids that weren't already funded or spoken for through the operations of CITV, and given ITV's pre-existing ambivalence through their operations of that channel over the years, I'm not confident there's any interest in making any. We're effectively losing a viable player in UK Kids TV by stealth and omission, the fears of many in support of a strong British Kids TV ecosystem back in the 2000s materializing in full about 15 years later. Like with CITV before it, the ITVX Kids selection is heavily dominated by imports, perhaps even more so than the linear channel at its least aspirational, given you can see the whole list of content available. I'll give them credit for the continuing breadth of North American and European representation, but I wish there were more originals to balance that out, more like CBBC's slate. Though CBBC isn't all that safe either. Back in May 2022, it was announced that the BBC would be closing that channel and moving it online sometime in 2024. We'll probably get a clearer date for that in their annual plan next spring. The BBC have already seen this song and dance backfire on them spectacularly once, when young adults channel BBC 3 was moved online back in 2016, only for its content to reach basically no one, even with linear programming blocks to limp it along, and the channel to return to linear television full-time in 2022. I covered that saga in other videos I'll have linked in the description. Despite facing the same headwinds as everyone else, and more given frequent funding freezes and constant political criticism, CBBC is still committed to producing about 250 hours of new UK content this year. I worry that that commitment will be greatly jeopardized if the channel becomes an online operation, just like what happened to BBC 3. Though given they're a public broadcaster, there might be more incentive for their heart to actually be in it than a purely commercial enterprise. But that doesn't give CITV any excuse either. A quieter, third domestic player is Pop, launched by Chart Show Channels Media Group in 2003, sold to Sony in 2014, then on-sold to Area of Entertainment in 2021 as Sony retracts from broadcasting around the world. Originally started as a kids' complement to CSC's music channel Bread and Butter, the channel soon switched to cartoons exclusively and found success almost by accident. While the lineup has always exclusively been acquisitions, which makes it a bit of an unfair comparison, the channel has progressively grown over the years, and in 2022, Pop made its first minor foray into original programming. With the planned closures of its bigger rivals, Pop may prove a stalwart eager to capitalize, if they're interested in the opportunity. And it's a story of persistence that suggests the opportunity is still there. It's just that the right decisions need to be made to nurture and capitalize on it. Something that's been missed with ITV's efforts in the genre. The end of CITV feels sudden, given how major its influence in UK Kids TV has been. Many Brits will celebrate their own slices of nostalgia from it over the next little while, between its 17 years as a channel and the decades of content as a block preceding it. But in some ways, its move to streaming is also the culmination of a slow death that's been happening since CITV was even born as its own channel. As much as it's found its own successes here and there, it's also been used as a scapegoat for malicious compliance and the whims of those who have treated it more as an annoyance than an investment. At a time with so many other closures and contractions within kids' TV around the world, it's more important than ever that more places have the ability to tell their own stories, instead of having to grovel outside the doors of some streaming service megacorp in Los Angeles for it. CITV's end is hard to take, but bigger, harder falls are yet to come, making it tough to see a promising future for the UK's youngest audiences and those who wish to deliver for them. For now, we hope and we mourn, as a big yellow letter skateboards into the night one last time. It's been a sad time to cover international kids TV, with so many channels closing, including the end of Canada's Teletoon earlier this year. I explored that story up here or down in the description. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications to catch more discussions like this, and you can support these videos directly for as little as $3 a month at benzie.tk/join. I'll see you next time.